Last time, in episode 3, we guided you through disassembly of the clutch, shift star, gears, and other PTO side components on our CRF450X engine, covering key tips and tricks to make your teardown easier. In this episode, we'll split the cases and finish the rest of the teardown.
Now that the gear and the special bolt that hold the balancer shaft into the engine on the opposite side is removed, it can then be pulled through the ignition side. A small pair of snap ring pliers is required to remove the snap ring that holds the oil pump gear onto the oil pump shaft. So once we get to this point in the engine teardown, there's a few points of interest that we want to look at. The first is the oil pump pickup and the washer/retainer that holds it into the cases. This retainer can be weak, and if it rotates when removing the bolt, it can fail, and if this is the case, it needs to be replaced. So keep an eye out for that. The next point of interest is the bolts that hold the cases together that are marked with a small arrow. These are the bolts, case bolts that require a copper crush washer. So just keep an eye on those, so when we get to the point of engine assembly, we can note that those are where the copper washers go. You can attempt to use a pair of pliers to hold that retainer in that holds the oil pump pickup, but in some cases it just might work, but sometimes might not be enough. Once you get to this step, you always want to double check and make sure all of the case bolts have been removed, so that you're not, when you go to split the cases, you're not trying to fight bolts that are still there. A few good taps at the mount points for the engine cases can allow the centering dowels that could be frozen up there to be freed up and allow the engine to come apart a little bit easier. So it could be helpful to move back and forth between the left and right side, so that if you do have anything bound up, you won't have to worry about putting too much tension on that. And when you do get to this point, when you pull this case up, you want to make sure not to drop or lose your oil pump, which is located out here, just in front of the crank. So it sounded like they fell, but always want to make sure, again, on the inside of the cases, wherever there's a shaft, you want to make sure that the washers don't stay behind, so that you keep track of those. So once you get to this point, we can go ahead and just remove the baffle from the bottom of the cases. And then from this point, we can also just remove the crank. Should just come right out of this. So then we can go ahead and remove the pins that align the shift forks to the transmission. You should just slide right out. And then we can remove these. We can remove the shift forks and the shift drum. And then we can pull the transmission out as a unit. Again, making sure where those shafts go through and contact the bearings, just make sure that any of the washers remain on the shafts. So now that the engine is torn apart and the cases are fully split, we can begin the process of cleaning everything and inspecting the parts for any unusual wear, besides the parts that we already were planning on replacing. This is going to be getting a brand new bottom end, crank, bearings, piston, and valve setup and clutch from ProX, so it's going to be ready for a lot more fun.